2-minute warning, folks. 2-minute warning.
Okay.
Okay, folks, we'll get everybody to take their chairs, please. Welcome, everyone. Do we have quorum? We do. Call to order. I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded territory of the Likwita people. Thank you. Adoption of public agenda. Mr. Director Wally has 2 items you'd like to add?
Second, Colbert.
Do we have a second?
Yes, and the new business, I have one, a procedural error at the electoral areas regarding the proposed fire administration service. I'd like to bring forward.
Sorry, could you put your microphone on, please, so they can hear you on the line? Thank you.
2 items of new business. One is a procedural error that we made at the electoral areas meeting regarding proposed fire administration service. And the second one is a electoral area service review I'd like to bring up. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none? Carried. Petition and delegations. Stephen Watson, Stakeholder Engagement Advisory. BC Hydro will make a presentation regarding the hydroelectric operations of 2022-2023 and the proposed dam safety upgrade project at John Hart. Did I just basically state your whole presentation?
Yeah, I'm done. I can go now.
Okay, thanks for coming in today. The floor
Thank you
is
very
yours.
much.
You have 10 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Board Chair. It's good to be here. I see some faces I've worked with and some new faces, and provide an update on our operations and some capital projects we have in the system. So next slide, please. So yeah, a little bit about operations with a main feature on the fall season we just came through. It was kind of record breaking for low water. Some brief updates on the John Hart and Lador facilities, and then more of an emphasis today on the Strathcona Dam project. So next slide. So just for background, we have the Campbell River watershed, and then we have the pictures matching where the dams are on the map. So we have the top right is the Strathcona Dam, holds back water, Upper Campbell Reservoir, Buddha Lake. And then as we move downstream, number 2 there is the Lador Dam, and that holds back water, McIver Lake and Lower Campbell Reservoir. And then below that is John Hart Dam and the John Hart Reservoir. So the water storage analogy I always use is Upper Campbell Reservoir is a bathtub, Lower Campbell Reservoir is a bucket, and John Hart Reservoir is a teacup. And so 80% of the storage is behind the Strathcona Dam. On the left picture, bottom left, is the Quinsam Diversion Dam. And we have some facilities there on the Quinsam River, which I'll just touch on in a moment too. So next slide.
My apologies, we're just having some technical difficulties.
Yeah, no problem.
There we go, sorry.
Yeah, next slide. Thank you. So I know this is a busy graph, but this shows the 2022 water year. So the horizontal graph is the dates, January to December, and then vertical is the reservoir elevation in the Upper Campbell Reservoir. So we want to be in between the two bold dotted lines. That's what we call the preferred zone. When we get outside of that zone, we adjust the river flows downstream to move back in the preferred zone. So largely we're in that, but you can see how unprecedented the fall season was and how dry it was. Driest fall season we've ever seen in hydro's record. So we're just barely enough to keep the river covered with water for salmon to migrate and spawn. And then we reduce flows again so to keep those eggs covered with gravel. So we did the best we can through that situation until finally the rains arrived around Christmas time. So next slide. So we did, over the fall season, reduce flows, and when we do that, we do them slowly so fish can move back into the main stem, but we do have fish salvage crews in place to move smaller fish back into the main stem, just an extra level of diligence. Next slide. So I referenced the Quinsam Diversion Dam, so upstream of that is Upper Quinsam Lake. It's a small storage facility that we have at the Quinsam River, so not part of our license, but given how low the water flow was in the Quinsam River, we actually put in some temporary pumps to pump water downstream for about 2 weeks, just to get by until we had a little bit of rain, considering the hundreds of thousands of salmon that are in the river system and the millions of salmon eggs. So just another level of diligence we had to go through. And the only time we ever did that was in 2000, so it's a pretty rare event. Next slide. So for 2023, we're in the preferred zone right now for this time of year. So the reservoir is declining a little bit, but not too bad. And the snowpack here, this is upper watershed, it's a little bit below normal, but still lots of time. So we're looking around 90% of normal water inflows, but we'll see what happens here over the next few months. So next slide. So now I'm going to switch to capital projects. This is a map that I hope everyone is familiar with. So we have the Strathcona Dam on the far left and the CD Cam River and the estuary on the far right. And this map shows the event of a major earthquake and if the Strathcona and or John Hart Dam failed from that earthquake and where the water would go. So it shows the water depths and the water arrival times. And so this is how we developed the saying, if it knocks you down, go to high ground. It's only a major earthquake that put the facilities at risk. So, but it's an interim risk. We have a capital project plan to upgrade the facility. So, but this is the driver for why we're doing the projects that we are. Next slide. So we've been consulting with the Webekai, Wewakam, and the Comox First Nation. We have the community liaison committee, about 24 stakeholders, including the regional district on that. We have the Discovery Center and meetings with the community. So we're just ongoing or providing education on our operations and projects. Next slide. We have the majorprojects.ca website, which we encourage people to follow along. We provide news and updates on all 3 projects at that location. Next slide. So with the John Hart Dam, it's our largest of the 3 projects. We're near the end of the BC Utilities Commission process, expected to complete this spring. We have 2 procurement packages. The Civil Works has been awarded to AECON EBC General Partnership, and they're ready to start this summer. We've been preparing the site with tree removals and creating laydown areas so we can hit the ground running this summer. Then the hydromechanical request proposals will go out, and that's the last half of the project. So about 6 years of work, with the civil work being the first 3, and then the hydromechanical spillway gate replacement as being the other 3. So these projects are about having these dams withstand the earthquake and then safely continuing to pass water downstream after the earthquake. Next slide. So this is just a diagram of the green areas as the upstream, downstream berms to widen the dam so it can withstand an earthquake. And then we have replacing the spillway gates and the hoist system and other upgrade work. So as I say, this facility can withstand a major earthquake. Next slide. So this is upstream. The Door Dam is on the top right, spilling water, and we have the powerhouse there in the foreground. Next slide. So this one is it's a concrete dam. It's found on bedrock. It's in good shape. So this project's about replacing the spillway gates and hoist system, control building, and backup power supply so they can safely pass water downstream. and you'll understand that too when I talk about the Strathcona project. So replacing one spillway to get time. We'll be filing this application to the BC Utilities Commission this spring, as well as starting the procurement process to get a contractor in place, all leaning towards work starting here at the end of 2024. Next slide. So Strathcona Dam, it's the largest dam on the island and on this, certainly obviously on this watershed. As you can see, the intake tower that delivers water to the powerhouse. Next slide. And so this is looking downstream. You can see the spillway gates on the right, and you can see this is a picture taken in mid-December, so never seen it quite like that. And so while this project is about lowering the reservoir after a major earthquake to ease pressure in the dam, this gives us also better water management ability. So in cases like this, no matter what the reservoir level is, we can continue to pass water. In this case, we have water going through the powerhouse, 2 generators, and we had 1 generator offline. So it wasn't an ideal situation, but we were able to manage through it. Next slide. So we're filing this application with the BC Utilities Commission at the same time as Lador. We're also starting the procurement process in the spring. We'll be doing some early site prep works this fall, removing some trees, which is outside the bird nesting season. Looking towards this project also starting towards the end of 2024. So that blue line shows roughly where it's good, you can move on. The blue line shows roughly where this excavated channel will be created. It's called a low-level outlet, about 330 meters long, goes deep, excavated into the bedrock, into the reservoir, and so it'll allow us to draw down the reservoir. So the existing spillways, as you saw, were high up in the reservoir. We could not lower the reservoir after an earthquake, so this one gives us that ability. So once the new works are in place, new intake and two gates within it, we'll then put a concrete structure where where the existing spillway gates are, that orange rectangle, and then we'll remove the spillway gates, and then we'll be good to go. So next slide. So like all the projects, we have an environmental and social economic report looking at all the different environmental components at the site. And through that, we develop construction and environmental management plans. So things like containing like silt curtains, in the reservoir, how we store the material on site, all those kinds of things. So a very comprehensive report we've provided to First Nations and government agencies. Next slide. From a community point of view, we removed the campground from the dam, and we created the Upper Campbell Reservoir Campground. It opened up in early 2021. It's been very successful. There is a 3-year road closure across the dam, likely in 2025 to 28, which we've been advocating or providing to the public. A lot of people are obviously interested in the environment and how we protect that, like fish habitat and water quality, which is very important. Job and subcontractor opportunities, of course, for all 3 projects, and this one included. And also will be, the access goes right past this dam to the Long Beach or the Long Point campground, Recreation Sites and Trail BC campground. So that'll be provided access during and after construction, which is good. So we've tried to accommodate those community interests. Next slide. So this is the final one. And so, as we talked about, this is about public safety and increased water management abilities. And the insert letter there is a letter from this board last year in support of the Lador project. And thank you very much for that. And so we're requesting the same kind of letter of support for this project from this board for our filing for the BC Utilities Commission this spring. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Directors, anyone? Anyone at all?
I've got a question.
Sorry, who is speaking?
Director Vinesh.
Go ahead.
Thanks very much. Just wondering, as climate change is becoming an increased risk for the region, and you mentioned, some of the things you're dealing with, what the plan is moving forward, given that these risks are going to increase.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. BC Hydro partners with different groups, academics on climate change, and of course we're powered by water here in BC. And so some of the studies for Campbell River shows that we're likely to get the same amount of water we do now, but it's going to shift from the spring, summer into the winter period. And then the winter period is looking to be cool or warmer than it is today. So it means less snowpack. So every year is different. We're seeing wide swings from dry to wet. And so it's challenging for us to operate within that. Every year we learn, like for now, we have this water supply forecast. It's 90% of normal from February to September. But a lot can change over that time, and so we use historical information, snowpack, and we're very conservative. Like last year, we conserved water, and good thing we did because we were able to get through the salmon spawning period. So we're very conservative in our operations, and but yeah, it's challenging not just for Campbell River system, but down south in the Pentland River and so forth. It's something we're always watching.
Thank you, Stephen.
Anyone else? No? Okay, well, thank you very much for your, oh, sorry, somebody?
Yeah,
Oh, Director Davis, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Stephen, for your presentation. I've asked this question before, but do you have any plans for putting in a siren system for if there is a catastrophic flood, like something that's actually audible?
Yeah, I do remember your question from last year. Yeah, we did talk with the City Cam River and the Strathcona Regional District about that. And the concerns that we had was the viability of it working after a major earthquake, because power is going to go out, things are going to get knocked down, so will it work? And so if people are going to rely on a siren system that may not be there, that's a risk. So that's why we developed a saying, if it knocks you down, go to high ground. And of course, the city now has their warning system that I know Sean Koopman's involved with to provide notification that way. So there's different means to do it. But basically we want people to recognize that saying, if it knocks you down, go to high ground, is the cue to move out of the evacuation area.
Yeah, I do understand that, but not everybody is going to be aware of that saying. And it's great that we have this other warning system, assuming you have a phone on you at the time. But I feel that there should be an automated system that I guess it could be battery powered that would activate some sirens in the event of an issue like this. It's just a third level of protection for people who may not have access to either of the other two.
Thank you, Director Kerr.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Stephen. Just my question on the bridge and the interpretive center. Anything new happening up there? Any changes up there?
Yeah, so
No, you should be good now. Just give it another press. Oh.
Test, test, there we go.
great, thank you. Yeah, so there's been work out there along the pedestrian crossing across the old Penstock corridor to Elk Falls, so we've done some tree removals. Basically, the plan is that we need to remove some loose material upstream of the dam and downstream, and we're gonna place all that material within the old Penstock trench to largely fill it in. And so that bridge will eventually be removed, and that work will start late summer, fall. But the bridge will eventually be removed. There'll be a land-based trail to the Elk Falls at that stage. And then that whole area will be replanted with vegetation, so it better fits in with the surrounding Elk Falls Provincial Park. And yeah, so we have an interpretive sign we'll be putting up there in the next week or so to better explain to people who are walking by what's going on. And of course, the Discovery Center is open as well for more information, so thank you.
Director Mowini.
Thank you for your presentation. And you mentioned that you were looking for a letter of support from the Strathcona Regional District Board. And in my, could you just clarify exactly which project? Because you were talking about 3 different projects, but you have one letter for one of them?
Yeah, so thank you. So yeah, we have the regional district provided a letter of support for the John Hart project a number of years ago, and then Lador project last year. So I'm here now to seek a letter of support for the Strathcona Dam Water Discharge Upgrade Project.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
If there's no more comments, I'll make a motion.
Go ahead, Director.
I'd like to make a motion that the SRD provide a letter of support from the board for the upcoming BC Utilities Commission regulatory process for the Strathcona Dam Water Discharge Upgrade Project.
Thank you. Second, Director Lott. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Thank you very much for your time. Okay, next we have Allison Bird, seismologist.
You wanna-
Sorry?
Did you want to accept the? Did you already?
Did I-
Sorry, just process-wise, did you already accept the present?
I personally did. Would you like me to share that with the class?
Did you want a motion to accept the presentation, to receive it?
Sure.
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Oh, all right, well,
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Earthquake Early Warning System. Online, we have Allison Bird, seismologist, liaison outreach officer for Nature Resource Canada. Please, Allison, go ahead, and you have 10 minutes, please.
Yes, thank you. I'm coming to you from the lands of the Sonic people in the northern peninsula of Saanich. Just trying to share my screen. If you could let me know if you see it.
You're good.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's get going. Okay, 10 minutes. Okay, so of course we have many earthquakes in Canada. We record and locate approximately 5,000 per year. The largest occur along the west coast of British Columbia, of course, and you can see the intensity of seismic activity on that map. And there are also significant activity in Quebec, Ontario, and Yukon. These inform the National Building Code. We have a very good code, and you can see the level of hazard here that is related in the code with your region in a fairly orange area, which means relatively high hazard. So earthquake early warning has proven effective in several countries, initially in Japan and Mexico, more recently in the United States, in California, Oregon, and Washington. The system is triggered by the earthquake's P wave, which is the primary or pressure wave. That's the initial jolt or rumble you might experience. And then the idea is to get the alert out before the arrival of the S wave, which is the big side-to-side motion that causes a lot of damage, but it's just a slower wave, so it arrives later. This can provide up to tens of seconds of warning, usually a few seconds at least, and this is valuable time in which you can take protective actions or in which there could be triggered automated protective actions for facilities. I should alert that very close to an earthquake's epicenter, it may not be possible to get the alert to you before the arrival of the shaking. But this is a little animation showing how it works. So the P wave was that yellow one. You can see the alert went out, and then that big S wave comes through, and the train has stopped, and various other things have happened. Oops. So the Earthquake Early Warning Network is being established in areas of high risk in Canada. So this is where you have both high hazard for earthquakes, but also there's infrastructure and people that are exposed to that hazard. Mostly it's along the west coast of British Columbia, but also eastern Ontario and southern Quebec. The system includes very specialized sensors for detecting strong earthquakes, high-speed communications, high-speed data processing, and also a cross-border integration with the United States. In fact, we're even using their software package. This has been proven effective in the United States for California earthquakes so far, but also it helps facilitate the sharing of data across the border because we also want to alert for those earthquakes that are just south of the border, and this will help that. So the alert thresholds will be based on both magnitude, which is the size of the earthquake itself, and intensity, which is the strength of shaking. And we will only be alerting for potentially harmful earthquakes. We have earthquakes about a dozen a day in BC. We will not be alerting for all of those, just the ones that could potentially cause damage and injury. So the alerts to the public will be sent via the National Public Alerting System. This is currently operational for Amber Alerts and for severe weather events. The distribution is through radio, television, and cellular phone. We will also be alerting directly to critical infrastructure operators so that they can trigger those automated actions. And this includes utilities, rail, health, and various other users that are technically inclined. So the idea is that protective actions are taken. The earthquake early warning system will only be effective if people and systems respond appropriately. So, of course, there's a huge educational campaign in relation to this system. And the idea is that these automated response technologies will do things like open fire hall and ambulance bay doors so they don't get jammed shut. The vehicles can still get out and help people. Closing valves so you're protecting your water source, but also protecting the environment from hazardous substances. Moving elevators to the nearest floor and opening the doors. Many people have been trapped in earthquakes in elevators. Having alarms that will do things like cause people to stop surgeries, slowing and stopping trains. In Japan, just last year, they had a large earthquake in the Tohoku region. They stopped the trains. Several of the tracks were very badly damaged, and those trains would have continued onto those damaged areas had they not stopped, and they carried hundreds of people. So it made a huge impact in terms of reducing the negative effects of earthquakes. Also diverting planes from landing, diverting traffic, that sort of thing. All these small things that can be done within a few seconds greatly reduce the impacts of an earthquake. And of course, people, we practice the drop, cover, hold on every October during shakeout drill, creating that muscle memory so that when an earthquake does occur or you receive that alert, you go into that safe space that's going to protect you from falling debris. So in Southwest BC, we've done a few simulations. There was a major earthquake in 1946 of magnitude 7.3. If that earthquake were to occur again, once the system is operational, we would see these warning times. So unfortunately, people very close to the epicenter in the Cumberland area would be within the late alert zone. They wouldn't get the alert until after the shaking, but you can see how much warning time other areas would get. Victoria and Vancouver both getting over 40 seconds of warning. You can do a lot with that period of time. Haida Gwaii is another example. There was a major earthquake in 2012. You can see that Masset and Skidegate would both get 9 seconds of warning. Prince Rupert would get 43. So this is a really exciting system, a very exciting technology to be incorporated into Canada. And I should note that when ours goes online in 2024, it will be the largest earthquake early warning system in the world, simply because of the size of our country and the areas we need to cover. So in terms of alert frequency, the public would get alerts, but this kind of probability. So within a 10-year period, you can see that the Vancouver Island, the central area where you are, you've got about a 50% chance of receiving an alert within that 10-year period. And then the frequency of alerts, you get about 1 every 10 years. So it's pretty good. So I mentioned before the late alert zone, if you're very close to this epicenter. False and missed alerts are very rare with these systems, but they are possible just because of the speed in which we have to analyze data. But the reliability of our system will improve over time through machine learning. So in summary, earthquake early warning has the potential to greatly reduce the impacts of major earthquakes in Canada. It will provide valuable seconds within which people and systems can take protective actions. We'll have cross-border integration with the United States, and the system will be operational next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Directors, Director Colburn. Do you have a question? Nope, sorry, saw your hand reaching. Oh, Director Davis?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And yeah, thanks, Allison, for this presentation. It was really good, super informative. I guess I'd originally advocated for this presentation, but I have a specific question that I wanted to raise with you. I'm the mayor of Tassus. We're at the end of Tassus Inlet, a long, narrow inlet. Also at a transect of 2 major fault lines. But my question is specific to tsunamis. Now, I know we're developing a tsunami warning system for the West Coast, which is largely an offshore sensing system. But my concern is specific to Tassus Inlet, and the reason being a couple of things here. If we were to have an earthquake here or some sort of other activity that might induce it, there's two ways that tsunamis could be generated within our inlet. My concern is that this system would not protect us from that. One is that we have a place down the inlet, Solon Narrows, where this delta is built about 2/3 of the way across the inlet. And if there was a subsea slump where the delta slid into the much deeper water beside it, that could be induced by an earthquake or could happen through flooding or some other spontaneous event, that it would generate a localized tsunami, and we'd probably have like 5 or 7 minutes before it would reach town here. And currently, we have no way of protecting from that. Another thing I'm aware of is also down the inlet from us, there's a major breach across the side of a mountain. The geologist had alerted me to. There's a break in the mountain, and the mountain could potentially fall into the inlet and generate a localized tsunami. So my concern is about having a localized sensing system that could warn us of that or trigger an alarm that would be instantaneous. Now, with Connected Coast coming in, this fiber optic cable, it will be coming up our inlet. So we do have a means of transmitting that warning. So I'm just wondering if you've done any research into this sort of thing, or if there is any way of having a localized sensing system for that using a Connected Coast cable.
Well, there are several elements to your question. I'll try to address them all. Let me know if I don't. What I presented with an earthquake early warning system, and it is strictly for earthquakes. Seismic data from national earthquake sensors are, however, shared with the National Tsunami Warning Center, but that's really for alerting to other coastlines of an earthquake that's generated in Canada. In terms of Canadian events, as the previous speaker said, the previous speaker said, the earthquake is your warning. If you feel the strong shaking where it lasts more than a minute or it's difficult to stand, that is your warning that there could be a tsunami. And that in your case, the tsunami is actually more likely than in many other locations because of those potential for coastal landslides into water or submarine slides. Monitoring landslides themselves is very tricky. Some of my colleagues at the GSC office in Vancouver use a couple of techniques to monitor landslides in BC. One uses satellite data, and the other is fiber optic cables. But in both cases, especially with satellite data, the processing is it takes a long time. You have to wait for the satellite to come back around. And it's really only for those slow sliding events. And this is being done in areas that are adjacent to rail lines because there's a slow slide that's happening. And so they're monitoring that so that they know if it's going to be getting close to the rail lines within a few days. Your situation is very different. For those fast sliding events, especially when you've got various different sources, it's really extremely challenging, and I'm not even sure if it's possible. So again, the earthquake is your warning in that situation.
I'm sorry,
hope that
Mark.
helps.
Director Davis, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I guess what I'm thinking of is a sensor that detects a shift in the water pressure, like the water column, because I thought that would be one way of determining that something has happened down the inlet, because there'd be a sudden rapid pressure change that could trip a sensor like that. And I don't know if anything like that exists, but, and again, I was speaking about a rock slide as well. In 1998 in the Nomash River, which is upstream from Zabalos, a section of the mountain spontaneously fell down, and it went to the bottom of the valley, up the other side of the valley, 2 kilometers down the valley, and was absolutely catastrophic. Fortunately, nobody lives there. Now, we have a mountain with a similar instability here. So we have no way of having a warning for that. If it did fall, it would fall straight into the inlet. So again, we'd have probably 5 minutes of warning if we had an automated sensor that would be tripped by something like that. But I guess what I'm hearing is that technology doesn't currently exist. Like,
Well,
this
in
is
terms
happening
of
other places, like
seismic data, I mean, we can record landslides with seismometers, but they're really difficult to locate and to monitor. It's not there. The seismic data that you get from landslides is, I can't really describe it. I can see it in my head, but I can't describe it. It's very difficult, and it takes about half an hour for a seismologist to locate. It can't be done automatically because of the style of the wave packet. It has to be done by a person, and that takes time, at least half an hour. So that's not going to help you. In terms of other technologies that are in the ocean, I suggest you speak with my colleagues down at the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. I can put you in touch with a couple of people who use various techniques for monitoring wave action. But I know that there are a lot of other methods that are being investigated, like using radar to observe the wave packets, because tsunami waves have a different signature than other types of oceanic waves. But again, that can take time, and it's more for if you can look out to the ocean very easily, and it's still being in development and being researched as to whether it's viable or not. So, as far as I know, I don't think that we have what you need in terms of, your specific situation.
if you could provide a contact to somebody I can talk to regarding developing a system like that, it sounds like that's something we need, because normal tsunami warning systems would not help us in Tassas. In fact,
No, they wouldn't, because the tsunami warning systems are for when you have a source and then you're alerting people who are far away from it. So the National Tsunami Warning System, if it's alerting us for events that happen in Alaska or Japan or New Zealand, they're not alerting us to our own events, because the processing takes too long, and the waves coming. So in our case, the earthquake is the warning.
Okay.
Well, yeah, if you could put me onto a contact for that to further discuss this, I would love to do that.
So
My
Thanks.
pleasure.
Appreciate it.
perhaps you can just send it by email to the SRD.
I will.
And they'll transfer it over to Director Davis. Thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate it,
welcome.
and you have a good day.
Thank you, you too. Take care.
Thank you, you too. Motion to receive, please.
So moved.
There we go. Second,
I'll second that.
Director Mawhinney, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none? Carried. Adoption of minutes.
So moved, Colburn.
Colburn, second. Director Wally, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Business arising? No. Public considerations? No. Notice of motions? No. Chair's report? No. Consent calendar, we're still figuring that out. Okay. Committee chair report. Parcel tax roll review. Thank you. Director Wally, second. What's your last name again? How long you been here? Chapman, Director Chapman. There we go. Thank you. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Electoral Area Service Committee, that the draft meetings of the regular meeting of the Electoral Area Service Committee held on February 8th, 2023 be received.
Move receipt.
Director Mawhinney, Director Wally.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Strathcona Garden Commission, that the draft minutes of the regular meeting of the Strathcona Gardens Commission held on February 8th, 2023 be received. Do I have a motion, please? Director Lott. Director Colburn. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. On there, staff reports. consultation process, CP 2C 22 RZ 3C 22 April Point Development, that the report from the CAO be received.
I'll move receipt.
Second, discussion. CAO, nothing to add? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that the First Nations consultant process for the agency referral list outlined in the staff report dated February 8th, 2023 be application of CP, C2, 22, RZ, C3, pardon me, 3C, it was dyslexic there, 22, April Point Development be approved.
So moved.
Second.
Director Chapman, sorry, Director Mowini was the second. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Subdivision Servicing Standards, Bylaw 64, that the report from the CAO be received.
So moved, Colburn.
Colburn,
Second.
Director Mowini. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that the report prepared for referral to the Electoral Area Service Committee on amendments to the minimum lot size requirements contained within the Subdivision Servicing Standard Bylaw, number 64. Director Wally.
Second, Colburn.
Second Colburn. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Electoral Area D Traffic Study, that the report from the CAO be received.
So moved.
Director Rice.
I do have a subsequent to.
Second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Subsequent, do we do that now, or we wait till the approval? Sorry. Receipt first. We're going to do the receipt first, John. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. There we go. That the report on the comprehensive traffic study prepared for portion. Yes, sorry.
I have a
Oh.
subsequent to that.
Please go ahead.
I would just like to refer this matter back to the East Committee for further consideration.
Second, Director Wally. Is this only the East votes on this? Yes. Discussion? East, all in favor? The whole board votes on that? Oh, everybody does, okay. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion received, goes back to the East Committee. Keeping of livestock in SRD chambers, livestock electoral area D.
Move receipt.
Director Colburn, Director Director Wally, it wasn't Colburn, sorry, Director Rice. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that the report outlining the process to amend the zoning bylaw for electoral area D be prepared to allow for 4 chickens or 4 ducks on the property that's less than 1 acre, with no roosters permitted on lots less than 1 acre.
Move receipt.
Director Rice,
Second, Vinesh.
Director Vanesh, discussion?
Director Davis has his hand up.
I'm sorry?
I have my hand up.
Oh, sorry, Director Davis, go ahead.
Why it is being limited to only 4 chickens? I mean, in our community, we allow a dozen, I believe, and it doesn't seem to be an issue as long as there's no roosters.
Well, if there's 5, they don't get along as well as 4 because they pair up. I have no idea. Go ahead, sorry, Director Rice?
The reason that I'm suggesting 4 is that we have there's quite a few lots that vary in size. So this was a way to kind of hit a compromise for everybody. And it allows everybody then to have something. Thank you.
There you go. So where are we? We have a motion on B.
For debate and vote.
Debate? All in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Okay, Advisory Planning Commission, alternatives and options. Receive the, thank you, Director Wally.
Second.
Director Rice. So close. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that the draft advisory planning commission bylaw refer to electoral area service committees for comment. Director Chapman got in there. There we go.
Second.
Director Rice. Oh, it's gonna be EA? Thanks for trying, Director Chapman, but next time, no hard feelings. Yeah, next time we'll get you in there. So we got Director Rice. I need a second from Director Mulwady. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Out of the four, anyone? Nope. Carried. Commuted parcel and community tax change report from the CAO.
Move receipt.
Director Rice? Director
Second.
Mulwany? Discussion? Anything to add, CAO? Nope. All in favor? Opposed? Hearing none? Carried. And that bylaw 218 and 403 be amended to specify the manner in which the changes to the property identification for commuted parcel should be addressed. Director
Second,
Wally,
Colburn.
Director Colburn. Discussion? This meeting is going to be over really quick if you guys don't have any input.
It'll slow down soon.
Will it slow down soon? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? See none, carried. Crown Land application. Referrals to the Regional District, report from the CAO be received.
So moved.
Director Mulwany, Director Chapman. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Inaugural Cal meeting, that the report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt, Colburn.
Colburn, second Mulwany.
Yep.
Saw you reaching.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Elaine will speak to the training that we're going to look at the Cal meeting. Or Renee?
Good afternoon, Chair Baker and directors. We're happy to be partnering with the City of Campbell River to bring some communication training into the region. And the half-day session on March 22nd is specifically designed for elected representatives. And it's intended to strengthen skills when conducting media interviews, speaking on behalf of your council or board at community events, and responding to social media. The facilitator, Jan Enns, is well-respected communicator and trainer specializing in local government and has presented this workshop to councils and boards across the province several times. And the training is open to SRD board members and member municipality elected officials.
Excellent. Directors, do you have any questions? No? And they can sign up by just contacting you?
Actually, RSVP through Edith.
Through Edith?
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So, Mr. Chair, just in case it wasn't clear, if the councils with other municipalities, if they wish to come, there's plenty of room for everybody.
Only pick the nice ones, though, okay? Just kidding. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I'll move be that the inaugural meeting of the Committee of the Whole be scheduled for Wednesday, the 22nd, March 22nd at 10 a.m. at the boardroom.
Second, Director Lott,
I have a question about that.
by all means.
Are you sure there's room for everybody in here?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. We'll make room.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Regional strategy for warming centers. Report for the CAO be received.
Second.
Director Wally, Director Mulwany, Discussion, Director Wally.
Just maybe before
One
Director
sec,
Raleigh,
please.
Renee will present this, and then
Sorry.
happy to take questions.
Sean and I are going to tag team, so we expect there might be some questions. Currently, there's no regional strategy for warming centers at the moment. The SRD doesn't have a social planning or community health services to enable providing social health services directly. There are individuals living in tents, vehicles, and boats throughout the region. In extreme hot or cold weather, these individuals are at further risk. In January, the emergency services teams from the District of Mount Waddington, Comox Regional District, and SRD hosted some community workshops to learn and share from other rural and remote communities on how they were supporting vulnerable populations in extreme weather. Participants also learned about funds and neighborhood grants available to nonprofits through the United Way. Many other communities are doing it very much at a grassroots level through community associations. At the last board meeting, the board approved a funding application to develop a poverty reduction plan. If successful with that application, the plan could identify the necessary social infrastructure to provide regional health and social services, including warming centers. Through the Emergency Management Act, the SRD has provided daytime warming centers, which are typically activated when a community has 2 consecutive nights without power. And in January 2022, Sean worked with communities to do that in both on Cortez and Sayward. In the report before you, there outlined some other alternatives to further explore warming centers that would be available throughout the region.
Excellent. Anybody? Director Wally?
Yeah, I believe that these kind of endeavors that we're contemplating here are inadequate because they really don't solve any of the underlying problems. They rather exacerbate them. And, free government accommodation without any accountability whatsoever just simply advertises, and today pretty quickly on social media, that Campbell River should be the immediate destination of every troubled soul. And I think that we would be much better positioned as a regional district to provide the funding to an existing organization with the expertise to provide these kind of services and the experience, that for ourselves to try and reinvent the wheel isn't appropriate. I believe that private organizations can do this better and cheaper, and that government probably should be the last people on earth to operate these services. My problem with it is that if we do it, who's going to supervise the facilities? Who's going to protect the vulnerable people there? Who's going to incur liability if somebody gets injured through our lack of supervision or oversight? So I think it's better that we utilize some organization that already exists, provide them the funding that they need to do it properly, and do it that way. I think one of the options you have listed there kind of suggests that. Thank you.
Director Rice?
I actually have a subsequent motion that I'd like to put out, if Edith can bring it up, please. Oh, sorry.
Let me try that. Anybody else? Director Davis?
Yeah, having represented a community that went a week without power and had to operate a warming center at our own cost, in our case, I think improved financial support from the regional district would be most helpful, because we certainly did get assistance from the regional district, and that was wonderful, but we ended up having to cover off some more costs for our community of 400, because about a quarter of our community ended up living in the rec center for a week. So we would appreciate supports in that regard.
Okay, thank you. That was on receipt. Director Curt?
Thank you. And, I think traditionally Campbell River carries the load on this because being the hub, of the region that we're the destination for a lot of the homeless, or, in terms of emergency, they're coming to this area. So I think that, having a regional strategy is extremely important, year round. I'm not just talking about extreme emergencies, but a strategy that can take care of our regional citizens and not put all the pressure on Campbell River to solve it. I recognize the fact that smaller communities have costs and are looking to the regional district or to us basically to finance. But I think having a regional program where everybody, all the communities are contributing to would be really important.
Okay, that would be option E on the list. Okay, Mr. Koopman, do you have any comments at all?
No, sorry, I was just wondering where option C was.
Well, option C is for another motion we're doing later. We'll get back to option C later. Director Colburn.
I as well would speak to option D, E, whichever you choose to call it in there. The coming from a rural area, and I'm not sure what was heard in the enhancing rural extreme temperature resilience workshops, because I could not attend. But in the rural areas, giving money to service providers, sometimes those service providers aren't in the community, and they are in the larger centers like Campbell River. So although lots of our vulnerable people are here, we do have vulnerable populations still in our communities, and so that kind of falls to the municipality. So yeah, we'll see what comes up for options, what somebody puts forward, and I would definitely be in favor of having some kind of a strategy that takes all of those things into consideration, talks to the service providers that may or may not be available in these communities, in all of our communities, and go from there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. That was on receipt. All in favor? Opposed? Which is carried. Do we have a motion from A, B, D, or E? John's got a motion. Director
I have a
Rice?
Subsequent. So what I'm proposing is that staff contact the Comox Valley Regional District to obtain further information on the services that they've created for the homelessness and extreme weather shelters, and to obtain further information from some of the directors like Director Ken Grant, who can actually talk about how successful this is. So what they've done is they've created a service. The service.
Stay with the motion, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Second, now you can talk, yeah. Sorry about that. No, that's okay.
Get carried away?
I mess it up all the time.
I was quite impressed. I sat in one of their meetings last week, and it was a budget meeting, and this service came about, and I think it's exactly what people are looking for. So what they are doing is they have the service, they generate some money from all of the communities. So you have all of the electoral areas, you have Cumberland, Comox, and Courtenay, all contributing to these two services. And what they do is just collect the money, and then they go to all of the outside agencies and say, bring us a budget, tell us what you would like to do, and then that's how the money's given. So it keeps them at an arm's length, it allows them to generate some funds, but it's turning everything back over to the people that know how to actually get things done. So I think it's well worth it to actually take a look and see what they're doing. You know, for example, on homelessness alone, they've been able to build 321 units of housing that are low-cost housing through this process. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, so on the motion that is on the screen, we had a second, discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none? Sorry?
I'm not opposed, but if we could also make the motion that if we support the development of a poverty reduction strategy, that be addressed in that poverty reduction strategy as well. I think they go hand in hand. So I would, yeah, option E as presented in the report of 4 options.
What option was that, Mr. Chair?
repeat it? if you-
They're referring to option E.
That
So
if
you
the
wanna
board supports
blend-
the development of a poverty reduction strategy, the matter of warming centers also be addressed as part of that strategy.
And if again, Mr. Chair, although, does we have a seconder first?
We did.
I'll second that.
Okay. I think listening to the discussion of Director Kerr and Director Wally, I think that supports what they were speaking to as well, if, just for clarity, and I think it would likely go well with the previous motion.
Okay, so we're going to attach E to Director Rice's motion. Just another motion. Okay, so on the other motion, do we have a second? Did you? I wasn't paying attention to you at all. I apologize. Okay, Tom did. That's Director Mowini. Director Colburn.
I have a question about that. If the grant for the poverty reduction strategy is not approved, where does that leave us?
We would come back to the board, we'd need money, so we would come back to the board and see if, with costs, and see if the board was still interested in funding it themselves.
Perfect, thank you, because I wouldn't want it to like fall off or anything.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Strathcona Gardens Ice Allocation Policy. That the report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt.
Director Rice,
Second,
Director
Director
Wally. Oh, sorry, a little slow there. It's okay. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And B, that the current Strathcona Gardens ice allocation policy be used to determine ice allocation for the Campbell River Skating Club. Director
receipt.
Rice, second. Director Chapman, discussion? Sorry, Director Lott? Nope. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Disaster risk reduction, climate adaptation. The report from the CEO be received.
So
And
moved.
I assume that Mr. Koopman is going to speak to this. Do we need a second first, please? Director Wally. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Policy question. We need a second in order to ask me to speak. Usually Dave just tells me to come on up here. No.
It's a new change of direction.
It's a little bit of overkill, Chair Baker.
So are the chickens. Sorry.
Through the chair to the board. Back in September, we submitted an application for $319,000 to intake number 1 of the UBCM Disaster Risk Reduction Climate Adaptation Grant for redesigning the Walters Island Community Hall to incorporate a tsunami vertical evacuation structure, painting First Nation artwork on our sea cans at tsunami muster sites on the West Coast, developing a tsunami educational brochure in the 4 SRD dialects of the Nuu-chah-nulth tribal language, and bringing the Tsunami 11th Relative documentary that's being developed by Ocean Networks Canada as part of phase 2 of that project to 13 different communities, 12 on the West Coast, and then Campbell River as well. But in order for us to start doing that work, we need your resolution to incorporate it into the financial plan. And also because the cost for Ocean Networks Canada staff to take that documentary on tour is more than a direct award can allow. I'll tell you right now, they're the only people that can take that documentary on tour because they're the ones that developed it, but their cost to do that is above our direct award purchasing policy. So we're recommending that you allow me to put the $319,000 in our financial plan to start the work, and that we direct award the tsunami tour to Ocean Networks Canada.
Okay, thank you. That was on receipt. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, it's carried. And that the regional application for the 2023 Disaster Risk Reduction Climate Adaptation Grant Program on behalf of local government and First Nation entities identified in the, no, what? Oh. We are. Dang, and I was doing so well with that.
I would move that the 2023 to 2027 financial plan be amended to incorporate the $310,000 of the UBCM Disaster Risk Reduction Climate Adaptation Grant.
That's what I was going to say. That's good. Discussion? All in favor? Sure. Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. C, that the Ocean Networks Canada be awarded a contract for screening of tsunami 11th relative documentary.
So move, Colburn.
I'll second that.
Mulvaney, second. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Was that opposed? Sorry, no? Motion is carried.
If I can, Mr. Chair, just for the Area A Director, because we've been working on it for so long, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong in the number. I think it includes $150,000 for the Cayuga Checklisset Recreation Hall Center for the assessment and the design.
Correct, for Walters Island.
Yeah.
Director Wally.
Yeah, if I could just ask a question on that. Did I see that you were thinking about increasing the height of the rec center for security in case of a tsunami?
Through the chair to Director Wally, that's one possible integration. So a tsunami vertical evacuation structure is about creating artificial high ground. Right now, it doesn't look like we need to make it higher, but that high ground can be created via a platform that's over top or surrounding the building, or by putting various flat surfaces on the roof of the building. So there's many different possible ways we could accommodate that. That's what the engineers and architects will incorporate it.
All right, I just thought I'd include the comment that there's a lot higher ground up the hill. That might be a better place to put a platform.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, sir. Are you sticking around for the next one? Excellent. That the Disaster Risk Reduction Climate Application Grant, that the report of the CAO be received.
So moved. Second.
Once Director Colburn wakes up, she's got the first, and Director Wally second. Discussion. Go ahead, sir.
Is there a second for me to talk?
Sure.
All right.
Just a second.
This is, thank you, one in the audience. Second intake for the Disaster Risk Reduction Climate Adaptation Grant is 51 hours from now. And this is your, I'm asking for your permission for a resolution to apply for just under $800,000 this time around. The majority of that funding would go to wetland assessment and ecosystem restoration planning in partnership with Cayuga Checklisset, New Chatlat, and Hamalco First Nations. That is under the Category 1 planning part. Under the Category 2 public education part, we would develop a story map for the Salmon River floodplain in partnership with the Village of Sayward and Comox First Nation. We would partner with Southgate School for a wetland restoration education program which would include a specific design to incorporate wetland management onto their school field. We would do 2 beaver coexistence workshops, not leaving Quadra out this time. Canning for disaster preparedness workshops on Cortez, and then 3 different types of gardening for climate adaptation workshops in Gold River, Area D, and Campbell River.
Okay, thank you. So that was still on receipt. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And B, that the regional application for the 2023 Disaster Risk Reduction Climate Adaptation Grant Program on behalf of local government and First Nation entities identified in the February 22nd, 2023 report from the CAO be approved. Director Lott.
Second. Davis.
Davis, thank you. Sure, that the regional district commit to overall management of the grant if the application is successful. Discussion. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks very much, Mr. Koopman. Request for financial assistance, Sayward. Thank you.
Second.
Director Colburn, Director Wally. Discussion? Opposed? In favor? Carried. Sorry, your microphone, please.
I move that the board approve a grant for the Sayward School Parent Advisory Council in the amount of $500 to assist with the swim program and field trips to be paid from electoral area A grant and aid budget.
Second.
Second, Director Chapman. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Hey, request for financial assistance, electoral area D.
Move
The report-
receipt.
Move receipt, thank you. Director Rice, Director Colburn. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that the board approve a grant to be paid from electoral area D. Grant aid budget is as followed. Should just do them all at once?
Yes.
Let's do them all at once, okay. B, I. Do-
Move recommendation.
Move recommendation, take second. Director Wally, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. The ayes have it. There we go. Bylaw 477, electoral area D rezoning. Report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt.
Director Rice, Director Colburn's a second. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that the bylaw 477 be given third reading.
Move recommendation.
Director Rice, Director Wally, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And the bylaw 477, being Campbell River Area Zoning Bylaw 1991, amendment number 61, now be reconsidered and finally passed and adopted. Director Rice, second. Director Wally, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Bylaw 485, 2023 financial plan. Move receipt, Director Wally, Director Colburn on 2. Discussion, Director Mulwini.
I just wanted to say that on receipt, I have an amendment, please.
Can't do it on receipt, sorry.
After second reading.
After second reading? Before second reading, I thought you said.
After first, before third.
After first, before third. There we go. Second, do we have a second? That'd be a second.
Second on receipt.
Yeah, we already had that. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that bylaw 485 being a bylaw to adopt 2023-2027 financial plan capital expenditure program, now be introduced and read for the first time. Motion, Director Lott,
Second.
Director Colburn. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. And thank you, Director Mulwini, it's your time.
Thank you. I would like to move an amendment to the 2023 to 2027 financial plan, and it would be this, that the Area C feasibility studies function 158 budget be increased by an additional $30,000 in the financial plan. And if I may just say that this additional.
Second.
Oh,
Get a second.
gosh, second.
Do we have a second?
Vinesh,
Director Colburn?
And now I would just like to add that this additional feasibility study funding is to explore the potential of water availability and a water service for Kwathiaski Cove.
All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, Director Mulwini's motion to, Director Rice?
I also have an amendment to make to the budget. That the Area D feasibility studies function 123 budget be increased by an additional $15,000 in the 2023-2027 financial plan.
Second, Director Wally, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And then we're going to go to,
Now we're on C, because these were.
now we're on C. Oh, sorry, okay. C, the bylaw 485 be given second reading
As amended.
as amended.
So moved.
Director Colburn, Director Rice. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. and that any written submissions received from the public in respect to the 2023-2027 financial plan and capital expenditures program can be received at this time. Mr. Yates.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to advise and confirm that we have received none. We have not received any written submissions.
Thank you. We had Director Raleigh and Director Colburn, first and second. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none? Carried. And E is that the member of the public be permitted to address, that's, guess we don't need that, do we?
I don't know, there might be members.
Oh, is there members of the public here?
Read it out.
I'll read it out. Okay. That members of the public be permitted to address the board regarding the 2023-2027 financial plan, capital expenditure program. Director Lott. Second. Director Boydie.
And we've had no requests, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none? Carried. F, that is further input from the public be considered prior to third reading of the bylaw 485 at the March 16th, 2023 board meeting.
So moved, Colburn.
Colburn,
Second.
Barwini,
Friendly amendment, March 15th, is the board has.
oh, sorry, March 15th is the amended. So we're still good on the first and second as amendment? You're good with that, guys? Okay. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Bylaw 486, Connected Coast Incorporation, CAO. Would you like to speak on that?
No.
No? Okay.
Move
Director
receipt of the
Colburn,
report.
Director Rice. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? None, carried. And that the bylaw 486, being a bylaw to amend the articles of the incorporation of the Strathcona Connected Coast Network Corporation, now be introduced for the first reading. Do I have a motion? Director Colburn. Director Rice. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that the rules be suspended and bylaw 486 be given second and third reading. Director Chapman,
Second?
Director Rice. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. And bylaw 486, being the Regional Broadband Corporation, authorization bylaw 218, 2018, pardon me, amendment number 2 be reconsidered and finally passed and adopted. Director Chapman,
Second?
Director Rice, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Correspondence. We are going to say, I'm sorry?
I didn't say anything.
I'm hearing voices now? Geez, that's not good. Oh, Mike said something. Okay, I thought I had to adjust my meds. Okay, sorry. Correspondence that 1 through 4.
So moved.
No,
I have,
no, sorry, I
I'd
lied. Oh. Director Vonish?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to pull items 3 and 5.
So then I move 1 through 6, 1, 2, 4, and 6.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Go ahead, Director Vonish.
Just on number 3, this looks like a really great opportunity. Just a couple of questions for staff. Do we have a sense of how much the SRD will be receiving? And secondly, what will be the process for deciding how we use it?
If I can, Mr. Chair.
Sorry.
Director Dahl and I met with the MLA last week to kind of query her about what she knows about the details of this funding. She didn't know much. Everyone's getting money. There is a minimum amount that those notifications will come out, she said, by phone and verbally over the next few weeks. So we don't, that money will come to the board though, certainly. All local governments are getting it. So it will come to boards and councils, and those boards and councils will decide ultimately how that money's allocated. On the back half of that, we had a conversation to her about, because there was, we've seen in the news that there's additional surplus, and she has said she's made a number of requests for the regional district and the city of Campbell River on items that may fit a treasury request, one-time treasury request, and she has no line of sight on their success, but has made a number of submissions on behalf of the SRD and the city of Campbell River.
Perfect, thank you. We're still on receipt. Director Colburn?
Thank you.
I'll move receipt.
Thank you. Second, Director Colburn? Oh, Director Davis? Your hand is up?
Yeah, I just had a question. What is the minimum amount that could be granted?
Again, nothing's confirmed, but I was reading an article in the paper that quoted the premier, and he said 500,000. But we won't know for sure until we get those notifications and checks. But I read a quote from him that said 500,000 was a minimum.
Okay, we're still on receipt. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Director Vonis, you wanted to speak to 5?
Yes,
Oh,
thank
sorry,
you, Chair.
motion to receive first. Number 5. Move receipt, Director
Second.
Wally. Second, Director Mulwany. Discussion, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just would like to thank the Cortez Fire Department for their hard work and clear communication. This correspondence sheds new light on the department, and it's clear they're delivering a high-quality fire service on Cortez. A couple of notes from the correspondence. The Cortez Island Fire Department is in compliance with WorkSafe BC, and there are no outstanding orders. The Cortez Island Firefighting Association is a strong organization with a diversity of skills and experience, and provides a significant leadership role to the Cortez Island Fire Department. It is evident that the board is committed and actively engaged in providing the necessary oversight and governance functions within the fire service protection model on Cortez Island. This is coming from the audit that CIFA had prepared. There is a capable and safely operating fire department protecting the people of Cortez Island. It is apparent that a tremendous amount of work has been done by the fire department personnel over the years to improve fire service delivery on the island and to meet the requirements as defined in the BC Fire Service minimum training standards. The bulk of the training program developed and delivery has been under the stewardship of the current Assistant Fire Chief, Mac Diver. The time commitment and work to develop and maintain this program is considerable and has resulted in an excellent training platform for the department. Just a couple of notes on the budget, because I did have some, I know there's public and press watching in regards to this correspondence. CIFA has submitted a budget that is significantly larger than previous years that will cost the average landowner on Cortez approximately $250 extra per year. And this increase brings the department up to similar standards as other fire departments in the region, and is the cost of running a service that will meet the newly released provincial standards that the department needs to be in compliance with by the end of the year. There was a request as part of this correspondence for the president of the board to meet with the CAO. I would like to make a motion that the CAO meet with the president of CIFA to discuss the issues raised in this correspondence at their earliest convenience.
Okay, we're still on receipt.
Oh, sorry.
No, number 5 is still on receipt. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, Director Vonish, just a question for you. Where are you getting your information? Because it completely contradicts the report that we got.
Sorry, what? What's the question?
Where did you get your information from?
Which information?
Well, in terms of your department being all up to standards and high standards and the training and so on and so forth.
So there's two pieces of correspondence there from the president of the board that all of the SRD board has access to.
Okay, but you didn't answer my question.
I got it from the correspondence on the agenda that we're all looking at.
Okay, so what you said is you hired an independent company to do an audit, is that correct?
No, I didn't. I didn't hire anyone. This is all information that's part of the correspondence.
Yeah, I have an issue reading, so if you could just please explain it to me?
Okay, well, the correspondence states that the fire department hired an external auditor to do an audit on the fire department. And I was reading some of the things that were the results of that audit that we're all looking at or that we all have access to.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions? All in favor? Opposed?
Did I make the motion?
Yeah, I believe you did.
Okay, great.
No, sorry, did I jump? Oh, we don't have a motion.
Yeah,
I would say it's unusual to make a motion to have the CAO meet with somebody. Happy to do it as, direction, but if I did hear that, the board can make any motion. I find that one a little unusual, but.
Yeah, I'm just responding to the correspondence. They've made a request, and I think it's a fair request.
Yeah, I don't believe that has to be on a motion either.
Well, am I allowed to make a motion?
Give it a shot, sure.
Great, thank you. I would like to make the motion that the CAO meet with the president of CIFA to discuss the issues raised in this correspondence at their earliest convenience.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I'm sorry, who?
Oh, that's me.
Director Mowini. Further discussion? You can. Sorry, we're just waiting for further discussion. Okay.
So just on discussion, I mean, this matter is in closed session. I'm not sure how much I can chat with the president or what I can say to this individual. So again, I think the motion's unusual. Happy to meet with anybody. Not exactly sure what I can share with the person this time.
I think the intention, as described in the letter, is to discuss the correspondence that's before the board.
All in favor? Opposed? So opposed, we have Sinnott, Dahl, Layton, Lott, Chapman, Baker, and Colburn. Motion's defeated. And Dr. Kerr, you've been promoted. And Director Kerr. Sorry? Did you miss one? You got Mr. Kerr, you got Sinnott, Dahl, Lawton,
Did you get me as well?
Layton, Kevin Jules, Mayor Davis. Okay. I'm sorry? Yeah, no, we got Director Jules. Okay, thank you. Sorry, the motion has been defeated. Okay, so we're on B, right?
No, I think that was both covered.
Okay, both covered, good, okay. We'll go to 6. Thank you. Municipal Insurance Association.
That was covered in the first motion by the director.
We're done. Sorry?
4 to 6 was done altogether.
We're almost there. We have a 3-page management report. I'm just kidding. Okay, members report. Sea lice impact of salmon farms. The February 8th, 2023 report from Director Davis regarding the open letter by Alexandra Morton be received.
So moved.
Director Mowini,
Second.
Director Colburn, discussion? All in
I have
favor?
a subsequent,
Sorry?
I have a subsequent after this.
Thank you. Director Jules, you had us. Director Jules, your hand is up. And you're muted.
Sorry, that must have been up from before. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Question? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. New business.
Sorry.
Oh, there's a subsequent. I apologize. Go ahead, Director Davis.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to send a letter to Joyce Murray, Federal Minister of Fisheries and Oceans, supporting the transition to closed containment fish production.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that for me one more time, please?
Absolutely. Okay, I'd like to make the motion to send a letter to Joyce Murray, Federal Minister of Fisheries and Oceans, supporting the transition to closed containment fish production.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor.
I'll second that.
Director Barwini. Discussion, Director Wally.
I'm opposed to this motion. I think the cost to employment, especially to Campbell River and its spin-off services, far outweighs the immediate concern of sea lice. I don't support the letter from, I forget the lady's name at the moment that sent it, but I'm opposed.
Alexandra Morton.
Yeah, Alexander Morton. I'm opposed.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Given that there could be opposition to this, I'd like to make a statement. I did write something down. I wasn't sure if I was going to bring it forward, but I'd just like to share my perspective on it, if I could.
Go ahead.
Okay. Back when fish farms were first moving into our region from Norway, I worked in the industry, both in construction of net pens and as a diver maintaining them. One of the first things I noticed was the ill health of the salmon being produced in these pens, seen as lesions and the sea lice covering them, which can often surpass 20 per fish. Mortality was frequent, and part of my job was opening special holes in the base of the pens and releasing the dead fish to the seafloor. I understand that this is no longer the practice, but cannot verify this directly. The talk amongst employees at that time was that the farms were moving here as the company we worked for was barred from operating in Scandinavia due to their practices. Regulation was basically non-existent here at that time, making it an attractive investment opportunity. Presently, we have several farms operating in Nootka Sound. Other areas, of course, too, but this is where I live. They're located on the main migration routes of our wild salmon. Over the years, we've seen serious decline in wild salmon populations here. This can be attributed to factors such as logging-related erosion and overfishing, but I believe the main reason currently is net pen fish farming. Research has shown that the farms concentrate diseases in the highly stressed fish, which in their natural cycle spend much of their time moving freely through open oceans, spawning in our rivers, which are a clean, safe environment for the smolts. When they leave our rivers, they migrate past the fish farms to reach open ocean. They're drawn into the pens due to the abundant feed raining down from them and are infested with sea lice as well as picking up other diseases. Most of them have been shown to not survive the trip to the open ocean. Our pens are often not in compliance with regulations governing sea lice concentration. Tassos depends largely on sport fishing for our local economy, and we're being adversely impacted by this decline in the wild salmon, as are our First Nation fisheries. Returns to our rivers are much lower than they were before the farms, and the operation of our volunteer-run hatchery in Tassos, as well as the federally run Canooma hatchery, are largely wasted efforts. We're seeing the replacement of wild salmon with corporate control of salmon production. As practice, the two are incompatible. I am not opposed to fish farming, but we need to move to closed containment. Sure, profits will decrease, but we will get our wild salmon back and ensure that communities such as mine are not impoverished by centralized control of salmon production. And having said that, I would make that motion, which I believe has been written down now. Anyway, that's my take on this. It has a negative impact for our community. It's hurting our economy. It does not create jobs. It takes away jobs. So I beg to differ with Director Wally's comments.
Thank you, Director Dahl.
I have a comment, a question.
One moment, please.
Well, I guess I disagree with Director Davis because I agree with Director Wally. And I don't think that taking advice from a self-proclaimed scientist that isn't really actually a scientist is the wrong direction to take. I've met with 3 of our First Nations leaders in the last couple of days. They don't support the direction of DFO, and I think we should be supporting them. So I won't support this motion neither. I think that there's a huge economic impact to most of the communities on the Central and North Island. And when the industry is supported by the majority of First Nations, I think that we should get in line.
Director Wally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're
I agree
next,
with
Director
Director Dahl 100%. I just want to say that trying to force these fish farms onto the land is economically unviable. And what you're really doing is force them back to Norway. They'll pull their business out of BC, and it will hurt us extremely.
All right, Director Vonish. You're muted, Director Vonish.
Sorry, Chair, thank you. Didn't the news come out last week that they were actually already been shut down and there is no decision or lobbying to do anymore?
No, that's only the Discovery Islands. There's still many, there's still others. But a fourth of the production has been cut after all the consulting that the government and DFO did to check the box. So, and that's exactly what the government did. They checked the box because of what they were ordered to do and actually did not take any consideration into the First Nations who support fish farming and rely on that monies. So, where are we? We're on a motion?
Yes.
We're on receipt?
Director Davis.
Director Davis? You made a motion, so we're voting on Director Davis' motion in terms of the letter. So, all in favor of Director Davis' motion? Director Mawhinney.
Davis and Vonish.
Davis, Vonish. Opposed. The motion has been defeated, Director Davis. Okay. So, management report?
Chair?
Yes, Director Vonish?
No, that's.
Oh, sorry,
Kerr.
Director Kerr?
I wonder if it'd be appropriate for the board to send a letter to the minister expressing our displeasure with the announcement.
We have a motion. Do I have a
I'll
second?
second that.
Discussion? Director Wally?
Could you just repeat that again, please? I didn't quite catch the last 3 words.
It was a letter expressing the board's displeasure with the decision.
All in favor? Opposed? Director Colburn, Director Mawhinney, Director Davis, Director Vonish. The motion passes. Okay, management report, nothing new business. Director Wally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 2 very popular things here to bring up. The first one is concerning a procedural error at the electoral areas meeting regarding proposed fire administration. We had a motion made, and in the discussion of it and the heat of the great support all electorals had for it, it never got voted on. It was supposed to be here as a recommendation for electorals. It didn't happen, so I'll make that motion now. That motion was, I move that electoral areas A, B, C, and D be removed from the proposed regional fire administration service. And if I have a seconder, I'll speak to it.
I'll second that.
So I have 3 points I'd like to mention in regards to this. First of all, electoral area A currently does not have a fire department, so why on earth would we want to be part of this service? If in the future we do, we can reconsider this. My second point is you cannot really kidnap someone and force them to be your partner and then expect there to be any kind of harmonious relationship. In fact, you're going to destroy any previous cooperation you ever had with that person. None of the electoral areas want to participate in the service. We'd be very grateful if you would allow us to honor the wishes of our constituents and let us not participate. And thirdly, I'll just remind Campbell River that you, in the past, have always had 5 votes, which was the majority of the municipalities, gave you the power to join a service or remove yourself from a service anytime you felt like. That is no longer the case. Now it takes 6 votes for you to get out, and there's no way that the smaller municipalities are going to let you out with your 70% cash flow. Now, in all these kinds of joint services, staff can only tell you what the entry fee is going to be. There's no way anybody on earth can predict what these things will evolve into in the future. When you're in, you're in. So you just have to be very cognizant of that when you set yourself up as the major financer of whatever these things come to be, because you're in for life. Thank you very much.
Director Kerr.
Thank you, Chair. And just a point of clarity, are we not investigating the service? We're not entering the service at this
Correct.
point?
Correct. But a question,
If I could just follow that up, I mean, I certainly agree with Director Wally. You know, I wouldn't trust this either. But I also know that it's easier to get in than out, and I understand. But I think at this point, we're just investigating a service that could be good for all of us. And I think, you know, there may be a little bit of sales to go on, arm twisting to make it work for all of us. But I think the intent right now is to get the information and investigate it and to make it and craft it so it is good for the whole region.
Director Wally?
Thank you for that, Director Kerr. The reason I and electoral areas bring this up ahead of the final decision on these matters is because staff will bring back reports that include the financial arrangement, what each one will pay. When we pull out later, that will change that entire report and make the financial part of it basically meaningless. So if you're going to figure out what it's going to cost you, how much better is to know who's in it to start with so you can divide up the costs equally. That's why we want to do it first.
So, Director Vonish, do you have a question?
No, sorry, my hand up was from before.
Okay, thank you. I have a comment, though. In our particular situation where Sayward is in Area A, if we decide that we're in favor of a regional fire service and Area A does not, now we have a shared fire department, correct? We have a situation where I know for a fact, like most fire departments, including from Cortez to Sayward, there is deficiencies because it's a volunteer-run system. And I'm sure it's probably no different if we went and audited just about every volunteer fire department within the regional district. And with a regional approach, that would blend all the training, all the safety, and have a fire chief that's actually responsible for that. So how does that directly affect Sayward Village? Go ahead, Director Wally.
Yeah, thank you for that, and I agree with what you're saying there. And when that comes to fruition, we can come to a resolution on it.
Okay, but however, we're looking at a possible change in our structure in the next couple of months, correct? How long before the feasibility study comes out?
Mr. Chair, I think it's not going to be long before it comes out, but just want to remind everyone the high-level intent of these regional services. Obviously, they're to take the resources that we have and provide an economy to scale to all our, in this instance, our fire departments. So reminding the board of the consultant's report, we consulted with every fire department as well as First Nations, and there was support from them even in the electoral areas. The intent of this, again, is to bring some economy of scale, some training, some expertise to all the departments at no additional cost. Otherwise, if there was going to cost everybody more, we wouldn't do this stuff. So we have support from all the fire halls, fire departments. So I'm not certain why the electoral areas are not supporting something that we have consulted with the First Nations and the fire halls.
Go ahead, Director Wally.
Yeah, just one final point. if electoral area and the village have a fire department, or if any electoral area has a fire department that is directly run by staff of the regional district, then what does staff need a service for to do their job? It just doesn't make sense to me. Maybe I'm missing something here. But for example, if you're purchasing 50 pairs of rubber boots and staff's doing the purchasing, what do
Yeah,
I need a
it's-
service to have them put my 10 boots in there?
Sorry, it's not as simplistic as that. It's not as simplistic as just ordering gear. As the CAO mentioned, it also related to standardized training, health and safety, vehicle maintenance and everything else, because we would hate to be in a position because of, we decided not to go into this regional event and have somebody oversee that, where one of our fire department, one of our volunteers, who's not on WCB and so on and so forth, gets injured because of health and safety issues that were not up to standards. So that's
I
what,
understand that.
that's what the regional chief would ensure that's done, not the staff, because the staff have no fire experience. Nobody here has been a firefighter for 30 years, right?
No, but what I'm saying is when staff runs the service, they're running the service. Who do you think's going to run the service? We're not.
No, they run it through the regional chief, as we were talking about before.
Yeah, the
Correct me if I'm
regional
wrong,
chief will be
CAO?
the staff's employee. They'll tell him what to do. He doesn't tell staff what to do.
Right, again, but there's an economy of that expertise there. So let's say Campbell River being the gold standard, them having the availability to access and resource everything. So finding an economy of scale with them already providing those resources, providing them to all the other halls, i.e. HR, records management, training, equipment, purchasing, HR, so on and so forth. They would provide that regional fire chief would provide those services to all the halls, and therefore the fire chiefs in those halls would not have to focus on that stuff. So that would be relieving some of the work that each of those halls would have to do, so they could focus their resources on doing fires and emergency
Yeah,
rescues.
I'm still missing something here, that in the municipalities, their CAO is going to administer that. The fire chief is the CAO's employee. Here, staff will be running it, and the chief will report to staff. So staff already has it in hand. I just don't get what the service is for us.
Look, I don't know if I can better explain it than I just did.
Anyway.
Director Rice?
I'm just a little confused. You know, for Area D, we contract the services to Campbell River and the Oyster Bay Fire Department. So explain to me how Area D going in on a regional fire service is a benefit. Because I mean, we're dealing with two different fire departments here.
Yeah, if we contract to Campbell River, so if there's an economy to Campbell River of using the resources they have and spreading them out through the regional district, then the contract price to Area D would be that much less. If there's a savings to Campbell River, which there has to be some benefit to Campbell River as well, then that would spill off into the lower cost for that hall and resulting lower cost to contract services for Area D.
Right, but that still doesn't explain the other fire service that Area D pays for.
You pay for that through the CVRD, your contract with. You have, Area D is split down the middle. Half of it is through contract services with Campbell River. The other half is through Oyster River. So you don't pay, we have no financial.
Director Wally, last comment?
Last comment, and then Area C, of course, is an improvement district, not part of the regional district, so they've got their own fire department.
Yes, and again, we consulted with them and they were interested in the resources we were going to offer.
Okay.
We got two more questions, one from Director Davis, one from myself.
Go ahead, Director Davis.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted clarification. Was this specific to electoral areas, or is this all the regional district municipalities as well?
That's a good question, thanks. So typically what would happen, somehow we missed it that there wasn't a vote. That vote would come to the board for the board's vote. So I can't remember an instance where we've done this before. This motion can either be passed by the EAs and then it brought to the next board meeting, which I think would be fair, so people could think about it. Or we could all collectively vote on it right now. It's the will of the board, but typically would have happened, as Director Wally said, it would have went through EASC and then it would come to the board with a staff report. There's obviously not that ability, so I'm not sure if it's Director Wally's intent that that motion just passes here and is brought to the next board or is dealt with today. Either way is fine with me. I think history says it's fair enough for this motion to be voted on by the EAs and then brought to the next board meeting with the staff report.
Director Wally?
Yeah, then I'll defer this to, move to defer to the electoral areas for the next meeting.
That's probably simpler, yeah.
Excellent. Director Vonish?
I just wanted to clarify CAO's point that all the communities have been consulted. I think the report pointed out that volunteer fire departments in rural areas do need more administrative support. Making the connection between that and that we need to move to a regional service is a jump. I think I can agree. I think most people can agree that these fire departments need more administrative support, and I think that's why we saw an increased budget from the Cortez Fire Department. The question of whether we need to create a regional service, I think, is a different question.
So Cortez is a great example. We could provide regional admin support services for Cortez far cheaper than what Cortez can independently provide them themselves.
Well, that's great to see, but we haven't seen any numbers, Dave, and you've been asked when the numbers are coming, and you're saying they're coming soon. Like it's this vague thing. It feels like the service is coming before the actual.
Yeah. Director Vonish, during the meeting, you need to actually address the CAO as CAO, please.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Thank
Chair.
you. Sorry, go ahead, CAO. Do you have a comment on?
Again, this work and these studies and the effort takes time. I understand some directors may be impatient, but you can't rush the process, so.
Okay.
Second.
On referral, we're going second. We have a second. We had Director Rice. Got it. Okay, thank you. No more discussion. All board. All in favor of the deferral? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Go ahead. Is your microphone on? Your microphone, please.
A second item of new business is regarding an electoral area service review. Now, the electoral areas have come to the unanimous conclusion that we are being unfairly treated by the board. Therefore, I move that the board convene an open, mediated service review as soon as possible. And if I have a seconder for this one, I will speak to it.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my hope that by conducting this review, we can avoid a provincial statutory service review that will otherwise be the next step if this preliminary mediation fails. Now, I've represented my constituents, the Area A, for 14 years or so, since the very first day this board was created. And during all that time, the EAs have had a very good understanding, congenial relationship with the municipalities. And we've never, ever been forced into a service that electoral areas didn't want to participate in. We've had some serious discussions about economic development services, tourism services, and on. In the end, the municipalities realized it isn't really ethical to force us into something our constituents don't want. Now, that doesn't mean that electoral areas don't like regional services. We've got our home away from home, and the only reason that exists is because the vote at this board was split 50-50, and electoral area cast the deciding vote in favor of it, and I'm sure Director Kirk can attest to that. We've got our hospital, we've got our connected coast, so we're not against regional service per se, but electoral areas are very different. Their constituents are very different than municipalities. A lot of our people move out of municipalities because they're looking for a little more freedom, get away from some of the government bylaws and things that is not their style of life. Now, we find, the majority of that case, that currently there seems to be a little bit of disconnect, maybe disregard for the wishes and concerns of the electoral area residents. And the hope of a service review would be to just amicably talk about this and see if we can come to some kind of an agreement. So I see that there's two options for the municipalities. You can, as we would like to see you do, make some kind of commitment that you're not going to force us into municipal initiated services so that we don't want to join. You got to remember that you guys at municipal meetings discuss these things, you come to a majority decision, and then they go straight to the board. We don't even know they're coming, and all of a sudden, we sit at the board here without discussing amongst ourselves, and there's this regional services who say, wait a minute, that's not what we had in mind. And that's where the friction arises from. So that's the one option. If you guys would be willing to commit to that, then I could withdraw this motion. The other thing is,
Hang on a sec.
Just if I can, I apologize, I have to interrupt there. The board cannot commit to that. You can't fetter a future board's decision on you're going to have a handshake agreement or some written agreement that the board won't, quote unquote, force you into it. You can't do that.
thank you, Mr. Leach. Yeah, he's correct. I misstated that. I should say that we could have some confidence. Anyway, the other thing is on this service review that I'm suggesting, you can approve that or you can deny it. It's your choice. The third option, that is the statutory review where we're headed otherwise, you don't have a choice in that. That will happen at the end of a long drawn-out process. There'll be a provincial arbitrator who will make a binding decision on these things. And if I could, just for a moment, I'd like to ask maybe Mr. Yates if he could just describe briefly how this in-house review I'm suggesting might be conducted, how long it might take, and how that might differ from the provincial one, how long the outside that could take, and what it might entail.
Yeah, I'll let Tom comment after this. First of all, I'm not aware of any regional districts that ever done an internal service review. I'm not exactly sure. And I'm not sure when you say service review, what service you're talking about, because again, I'm not certainly aware. I think it may be, if the board's interested, worthy of a staff report, bringing back some information. But are you talking about every single service when you say a service review? Like
Yes.
what, so are you aware or do you know of any regional districts that have done an entire service review on every single service? That is foreign to me.
Well, I'm sure some of those reviews would not last more than 5 minutes, but what I read in the statutory review is that the province would much prefer that we do an in-house review and try and resolve it ourselves before they get involved. That's where I got that from. I didn't make it up.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying you did. Just when the statute talks in terms of a service review, I believe they're talking about a service. So you review a service. If we're talking about the entire, all the services, to me, that lends to more maybe policy possibly, but I don't know how. I think it might be worthy of more discussion in the staff report, because how would you do an overall internal service review? I've never personally seen that, and I'm not sure how you would review that from 14 perspectives here. I would say if the board is interested in looking at that, I think we need to take a few steps here and start with the staff report, kind of narrowing the scope, because again, I'm just not sure how, let's say myself or Tom would conduct a internal service review. I'm puzzled by that, but.
Sorry, Director.
Obviously, I've never done one before, but
Okay.
Mr. Yates perhaps could.
Sorry, 1 second, Director Wally. Director Kerr.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a few comments. At this point, I don't believe that this board has forced any electoral areas into making decisions that they didn't want. That hasn't happened. Now, as one of the and it feels strange saying it, the old timers on this board, and there's only a few of us left. I 100% understand where this distrust comes from, because up to this point on this board, certainly there was a high level of mistrust, and both directions on the board. But I really do feel that with the new makeup on the board, and you look around, that we're in a different country now. It's a different feeling around the board, and I think it's more of a board, and maybe I'm sticking my neck out, that is willing to compromise and understand, the situation that the electoral areas are in. And it is, you're right, quite different than municipalities. And I don't think that's been recognized that much in the past. But I don't think we need to go to the level of a service review or threats of provincial service reviews to build up the trust that we need to around this table. And I think that's where we're at right now. And I think, on the last issue that you brought on, that having the information in front of us makes us all more informed as to whether or not to proceed with it. But when you're acting with no information, you can't make a proper decision either way. So, I really do. I understand where you're coming from, even more than you probably understand or realize. But I do think this is a different board, a different time.
I just, before I jump to Director Colburn next, I just want to be clear on what you're asking for, because it sounds to me what the electoral areas are asking for is to only pick and choose, or as was brought out at the last meeting, cherry pick what services you want to be involved in the regional district. Am I reading this correctly? Because that's what it sounds like to me.
The only issue, Mr. Chair, is that we do not want to be forced into a service against the will of our constituents. We want the will of our constituents to be honored at the board. But let me say this, that the words that Director Kerr has expressed I find very encouraging. And if that's the feeling of the board, I'd be willing to withdraw this motion for the present time. So I will withdraw that motion if that's okay with the seconder. We'll just leave it off the table for now.
Director Rice?
I just wanted to comment that, and again, that it's quite encouraging listening to Director Kerr. And I do have a feeling that more can be accomplished at this table. However, that said, there is the need to have some informal reviews done on some of our services. I know that I have one in particular. And I'm not looking for, a drawn-out process. An informal review, I think, would suffice for me, and it's only one item that I'd be looking at. Thank you.
Director Colburn? Director Wally, can you turn off your mic, please?
I don't think I can speak if the motion's been withdrawn.
I withdrew it.
Yeah, so,
Well, let's not speak on the motion. Let's just finish this conversation. Pardon me? It's up to the board if we're going to allow this conversation to continue with. I'm good with.
I just have one comment, and I was really, it was a positive thing that was mentioned by Director Wally, that it's always been congenial here and that services have been supported, even though the back and forth. So my question was going to be, which services have you already been forced into? And that was kind of, because as you said, you hadn't been, right? So let's continue on with that vein, and let's have some really good conversations around the table and get as much information as we can about everything to start with. And then, yeah, I'm hoping that a new board, new day, right?
I'm just a little confused. The EAs have not been forced to any service agreements, correct? But yet we're having this conversation.
Just to be clear, Mr. Chair, nobody can be forced into anything on a vote of the board. It's 14 people, 8 votes support, 8 votes fail. So nobody is forced. It's a democratic process that we have assigned voting. So, you could argue somebody was forced into supporting a letter of the board to the fisheries Minister, because not everyone support that. I don't characterize that as forced into it. We vote as a group, and you win some and you lose some, but I don't, nobody has ever forced into anything. That's not possible.
Director Chapman?
Thank you, Chair. A question to the CAO and corporate officer. And I agree with Director Kurt. I don't, I've never seen anybody being forced into anything in my career in local government. But if we have a service that an electoral area is participating in, and now they wish to withdraw from that service, what would be the process that would need to be followed in order for that to occur?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think primarily that would be, it's always up to the board if they wish to allow a participant in a service to be released from that service. The board can do that through a simple bylaw amendment that may require the approval of the electors, depending on the type of bylaw, the nature of the service, et cetera, et cetera. If the board was not willing to allow a participant in a service to opt out, shall we say, of that service, then it would be up to the director for that area to petition the Minister of Municipal Affairs for a formal service review, which may or may not result in the desired opting out by that member. And each circumstance is going to be different, but essentially the message would be it's always up to the board if they wish to amend a service bylaw. Sometimes those amendments will be subject to approval of the electors, sometimes they will not. So it's really, it has to come to this board first. And it would be on a service by service basis.
We're good? That's it? It's been moved? I mean, unmoved and moved to another date with staff recommendations and another, same place, same time, same bad channel, folks. Anybody else got anything to add before I move on? No? Okay, well, we're going to be going into closed session. And that the report from the CAO be received. Second, Colburn, Wally, one of the two. Discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Sorry, Director Mawhinney, you have something to add? Yeah, I figured we'd just close this first. Yeah, okay. And that the closed meeting be held immediately following the public session to consider matters deemed to fall within the parameters of Section 90-1 FGIKNO of the Community Charter.
So moved, Colburn.
Cool. Second?
Second, Mawhinney.
Mawhinney, discussion? All in favor? There we go.
We'll be receiving a link.
We're good.
Move termination.
No, we don't have to do that. We're going into closed session. Okay, so we're going to take a 10-minute. That was a good suggestion from Director Chapman. 10 minutes. I was going to go 11. Okay,